The top two players in the electric vehicle revolution by far are Tesla and Chinese automaker BYD. And in the fourth quarter in 2023, with BYD surpassing Tesla for the first time in total EV sales, there's a narrative that BYD and Tesla are competitors. Today, General Manager Yunfei Li of BYD actually said that they view Tesla as a friend and not as an enemy. In fact, BYD is a vendor to Tesla, selling their batteries to them. And just last week, Elon himself said BYD is a partner and that he highly respects the Chinese automakers. Let's learn more. So I've got Brian White joining us. He's the host of his own YouTube channel, MyTeslaWeekend. Thank you, Brian.
Oh, Herbert, this topic is exciting. I'm glad you got one. This is right up my alley, and I hope we've got some good nuggets of wisdom to share.
Yeah, let's talk more about BYD and Tesla. BYD looks like that they're moving fast. They just showed their recent financials where their profitability has grown as well. But it's good to hear, right, executives from both companies talking about each other because there is really this false narrative. Now, you know, as we and you and I have said, and many of the other Tesla influencers out there, we've been talking about how BYD is not a competitor. These electric vehicle companies out there are the more the merrier, and what we're really trying to do is get rid of the ICE cars once and for all. So the news is from Teslarati. BYD executive dubs Tesla as a very respected industry peer. This is the comments from Yunfei Li, general manager of branding and public relations at BYD. You know, they regard their Tesla as a key ally in a transition to sustainable transportation, not an enemy. This is despite BYD overtaking Tesla as the world's largest electric car company in late 2023. As we know, they sell new energy vehicles that includes both battery electric and plug-in hybrids, but they also sell the batteries to Tesla. So Tesla is actually a customer of theirs. And then there's a big difference, as you and I have reported many times. BYD sells it, you know, the kind of the lower priced cars, affordable mass market segments. And there is a few that compete directly with the Tesla Model 3, Model Y. But it's really not. They're two separate segments. And now that they've passed the number of volume of cars sold past Tesla, there's people saying, hey, there's a narrative forming that they're competitors. But as per Lee, BYD considers Tesla to be a respected colleague in electric vehicle. And he's also said that Tesla is an important client of BYD. So this is what he said. Tesla is our very respected industry peer. It is also our client. I think this market is very large. It's not that we must surpass them or they must surpass us. Instead, BYD and Tesla together are more new energy vehicle brands together. We need to think about how to increase the new energy vehicle cake. Yeah, thoughts on that, Brian?
Okay, so let's start with we're going to get comments saying they didn't surpass them. Well, they kind of did. For years, we saw BYD's numbers climbing, but a lot of times those numbers included the hybrids, and well, you can't count that. And I would agree. If you're either burning gas or you ain't, and they were burning gas. But in Q4 of 23, BYD surpassed Tesla's pure BEV sales. Now, there are a lot of companies where I would see that and say, that's a blip. In BYD's case, that does not appear to be a blip. That appears to be a solid trajectory. This is something that was a long time coming, and they have reached it. The second part to that is to say, yes, but you know, a lot of those are very low cost, pretty low quality, China-only domestic sales. That's fine. If they're replacing an internal combustion vehicle, that's still a win. So the competition can make you stronger. So with those vehicles, you've got to say, I've been warned on my channel. I did a video a while back talking about the Chinese factories that will be built in Mexico to get cars into the US. And people say, we need to set up more roadblocks. No, we've had 30 years of roadblocks. That was only to stop the rising tide. It's not to push the tide back. That floodwater is coming either way. All it did was buy time, and a lot of the car companies didn't use it that way. They didn't use it as an opportunity to move to higher ground. Instead, they just said, it's good enough for now. I'm chasing this quarter and next quarter's profits, and the long term can sort itself out. So BYD's got a lot of the fact that they're able to now show a good profit trend while moving to the BEVs, the battery electric vehicles, is huge. Because for a long time they were saying, critics were saying, rightly, well, if they didn't have sales that included internal combustion engines in some regard, then they would have no profits at all. And that may have been true. But as the slice of the pie that is pure battery increases, we're seeing that no, they are in fact making a profit, which is critical. Because if you're losing money on every unit you sell, the easiest way to stop losing money is to sell fewer cars. That's not what you want. So we've got, but once the car leaves the China market, there's two things that drive up the cost. The first is Chinese companies have chosen not to export their base models. Those would not be well received in a lot of developed markets. And the second reason is once you raise the quality and safety standards to an acceptable Western level, the price is on par with anyone else. It's not enough that they're made in China. They have to be made well in China and efficiently. BYD still has room to get more efficient. They have a very large head count for how many vehicles they make, but they have other business sectors as well, which drives up the head count. But what we're seeing in Europe is the BYDs are not insanely cheap. It's just another good competitive car at a reasonable price, which means they've got room to improve, and they will, and they've already got some market share, which they will expand.
Nice. Thank you for that. So the reality is, right, in the electric vehicle marketplace, there's really two major leaders right now. It's Tesla and it's BYD. And the rest are really far behind. There's a lot of players in the China market. So there's, and many of them have actually raised so much money a couple of years ago, but now they're out of business. So there's a lot of little tiny players all over in China. So you might see Tesla's market share in electric vehicles going down a little bit. That's because of just new entrants, all getting little tiny pieces of the pie. But there's a real separation between BYD, Tesla, and the others. Okay, and the huge separation even between the German automakers, the European ones, as well as the American ones. They're still very, very far behind. So BYD is an important player, but again, if you put it back into place, look at all the competitors in the ICE cars. There's so many very, very strong companies. That's being changed. That's going to be completely wiped out. ICE cars will die. You will be replaced with EVs. So these two will survive. So that my point is that it's like you don't need to worry that there is a BYD. What's going to happen to Tesla? There's just the market, the demand for electric vehicles is skyrocketing. Maybe a little small blip based on macro, but it's still growing like an exponential curve. Thoughts on that comment? Yeah.
Absolutely. What we're seeing, this is not new for companies to cooperate. You've got cars like the Ford Probe, which was joint developed with Mazda as I want to say, I don't remember which model, but there was a Ford Probe that had a Mazda crossover model. There was the Mitsubishi 2000 that was also a Dodge Stealth. It's not unusual for these companies to work together, especially when their markets don't necessarily overlap. And when it comes to the emerging markets of electric vehicles, the market is so big that it doesn't make sense to try and fight about it everywhere all the time. Like you said, the market is growing so quickly that it just makes sense to cooperate. BYD can see that if they want to sell cars in the US, they're going to be using the NACS, the North American Charging Standard, the Tesla plug. That's just one little tiny step. BYD is a company that is, in many ways, a lot like Tesla, more like Tesla than any of the legacy companies. BYD also makes their own batteries. BYD is very vertically integrated. BYD has a chip design division, and like Tesla, they don't actually make the chips, they just design them. And of course, they've got some in-house FSD development that they're working on and struggling with, as absolutely everyone does. So BYD is a lot more like Tesla than Ford or GM or Stellantis are like Tesla. And so, they are not shamelessly playing follow the leader. They're saying, look, we want to hold hands with the leader and And the real competition is internal combustion cars. Let's work together to take bigger strides than we could on our own.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Brian. So let's continue looking at the rest of this article. And then I'm going to play a video of Elon Musk talking about BYD. So basically, they said that BYD's and Tesla's relationship has evolved over time. And in the early days, when the original Tesla Roadster, this is 2011, Elon actually mocked the Chinese automaker BYD. I'm going to play that video. In more recent years, though, right? It's just many, many times Elon has been expressing his respect for BYD over and over again. He says that it's the Chinese automakers that were really going to be the most competitive, and he's actually pretty happy that they are. And what he said recently at the last Q4 earnings call that just happened, he said that Elon said, very, very appreciative of our suppliers. He said this, we're very appreciative of our suppliers. You know, Panasonic obviously is our longest supplier. They're an amazing company. You know, we've got Cattle, we've got LG, and we've got BYD. So those are his partners. I'm going to go ahead and play this clip from 2011. Elon is talking about BYD. And at the time, you got to remember, this is a long time ago. It was very different environment.
BYD, which is also on the West Coast. I think they're ramping up production of their electric vehicles. Warren Buffett owns 10% stake in that. Why do you laugh? BYD is trying to compete. Why do you laugh?
Have you seen their car?
I have seen their cars, yes. In fact, at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, I saw their cars.
Yeah.
Well, they are on a different, tell me why you're laughing. You don't see them at all as a competitor?
No.
So let's remember the time frame. BYD had very little in terms of cars. They were still making pure gas cars, and they weren't a very serious company. They were really a cell phone battery company. And in 2011, the idea that they were going to be imminently creating competition for the Model S was laughable. And when you were saying that Elon said that he's happy that it's BYD, I can see why. BYD rose to the challenge. They said, look, yeah, maybe we are laughable. Maybe we need to make the world's best batteries, or arguably the best batteries, and we need to make good cars. And here we are, even 13 years later, and BYD continues to struggle outside of China. Their numbers are not great in a lot of places. Now, they do have bus factories around the world. I want to say they have 6 or 7 of those, including one in Los Angeles. BYD electric buses are well regarded. 11 years ago, those didn't, or 13 years ago, those didn't exist. So BYD has grown into its big floppy puppy ears, and now is a very respectable dog.
Respectable dog. Absolutely. I mean, again, 2011, here's Tesla creating their Roadster, right? High-end, very expensive sports car. They're about to launch their Model S. Again, high-end, 70,000. And then somebody's saying, do you think BYD is a competitor? But BYD was creating these tiny little cars that are, inexpensive. They're purposely trying to go from the low end of the market and going up. So they're not in any way, they're not even the same galaxy competing with each other at all. And somebody goes, what about BYD? So, that's what I got from that. And of course, the thing that people forget is that, really the last 4 or 5 years, every year he's been saying it's the Chinese automakers. Now, you and I have done a show on Tesla's presence in China. And we showed how the Chinese media, the Chinese politicians, we actually have video of that in one of our shows. I can't remember which one it was, but how they were just speaking very highly of Tesla. Tesla is what was the number? Was it 95% or even higher of everything they do in China is sourced from Chinese suppliers? And the Chinese government was saying that we're so lucky that Tesla was here, because if they weren't here, Tesla was the one that kicked off, the Model 3 kicked off the EV revolution in China, and that they are the ones, Tesla's the one that is helping the Chinese government and the Chinese automakers. They're learning so much. So, Tesla, I think that you were going to see more partnerships is what likely will happen. A lot of people don't agree with me here, but I think that Tesla will partner with the Chinese uh, more than what we're seeing now. That's what I
Technology
see.
sharing just makes
Yeah.
makes sense. When we look at, a lot of people will look at the Chinese market and say, wow, China is coming. And BYD is meanwhile the electric leader in among Chinese manufacturers. They're looking in their rearview mirror and they see 100 other guys trying to get in on what they've got. And there is room for more than one player, but there isn't room for 100. There are
Yeah.
too many electric car companies out there. A lot are going to fail. Many will face consolidation, and BYD is trying to position themselves as the winner, and they're likely to do that. And it's just clear to me that it's going to be a lot easier for them if they're cooperating with somebody who has, in many ways, definitely better tech, in every way, arguably better tech. BYD may lead on this or that, but it's debatable. They're not a clear front runner on anything except maybe battery cell price on LFP because they own the factory.
Yeah.
But other than that, and yeah, BYD has the battery factories. They have
Yeah.
a lot of the competencies they need.
So I have a prediction of what's going to happen. Just a prediction on my part. Forecast. Love to throw these things out once in a while, just for fun. I think that obviously BYD's, beat Tesla in terms of volume sales for electric vehicles for the first time in Q4. That might continue, but they're going to switch places. But once Tesla releases their compact car, the sub $25,000 car, and maybe a few years later, why is everybody so worried about BYD beating Tesla? And again, we set this up by saying nobody should be caring if BYD's doubled the number of EV sales than Tesla. Doesn't matter. What matters is Tesla is on its own doing very successfully, and BYD doubling their sales does not in any way reduce Tesla's sales as far as I'm concerned, because the growth rate and the demand for EVs is so high. But my prediction is that why is nobody saying that once Tesla creates a low-end, low-price car, that will hurt BYD? Because the vast majority of their volumes, first of all, they have 25 trims. And so Tesla comes in, has lower price because they're all volume on one version of the car that's shared amongst the Model 3, Model Y, and others. They're able to lower their supply costs. That damage to BYD is going to be more than BYD's entrance into the premium car trying to challenge the Model Y and Model 3. So it's like, again, if you want to pit these guys as head to head and they're somehow competitors, let's go ahead and do that. Why aren't you worried more for BYD than you would be for Tesla in a couple of years from now?
That's a very good point. If you were to remove the China market from all the EV numbers, you would see all the Chinese makers disappear from the charts.
Yeah.
Because while a handful of them export, none of them export in serious volume yet.
Yeah.
That number is hoped to increase, but the competitors that they've made for the Models 3 and Y are not quite as good and about as expensive. And if you're talking a car that's $1,000, $2,000 cheaper, you're just going to go with the Tesla. But you're right, the $25,000 model is going to, in China, likely start seeing substantial sales. The Model 3 is already quite affordable, but to drop the price even further, to design something that's purpose-built perhaps for the China market, something that's designed domestically that is exactly to their taste, that could be a huge seller. But definitely when you get outside of China, if you're looking for a value EV, I don't know why you would buy a BYD or an Aura or a Xiaopeng when you've got already other options like the Model 3 that's getting quite affordable, but a Tesla compact, which would have presumably quite good performance, quite good features. Tesla doesn't make cheap cars, and it would make for some real tough competition. And Volkswagen's got their ID2 that they hope to release this year in Europe, maybe early next year for $27,000. You've got others trying to get into that price range as well. It's going to be, that's actually a very good point, is when the compact is released, I don't know how any Chinese company is going to compete with it.
And the other point I want to point out, the other point is you have to be global. So Nicholas Colas, who is a well-renowned auto industry expert for decades, he pointed out that he thinks that BYD is not going to be a serious contender. And the reason is that he doesn't think that they're going to be able to go global, meaning to say that they need to sell at big numbers in Europe and in US, just like the Koreans were able to do in the 80s. The Japanese first did in the 70s, the Koreans did in the 80s. BYD needs to do this. Now, the Chinese automaker could do this. That's the goal. But you see, they need to get global first before Tesla, who's already global, gets to the compact car. Again, I don't want to compare the two, and we shouldn't be doing that. But the reason why it's important to go global is that you need to show, if the more volume you can sell, if you're just stuck in China and the small numbers in Europe, you're only going to sell 1, 2, 3 million units per year. You need to be selling 10, 12, 15 million units per year. When you do that, all your prices go down, your quality improves, everything you accelerate that ability to take advantage of, your trims, all those things are much better. So that's the other thing that people aren't forgetting, that Tesla's already global. And so it's easier for them to grow their numbers than it is for BYD, who needs to still go global. They still need to build factories that they're starting to make moves, but they need to build more factories sooner than later.
And lost in this discussion is Tesla has done this with literally 4 models.
Yeah.
4 models.
Yeah.
BYD has caught up, and like you said, they've got a cajillion. If you look at the top 20 best-selling EVs in China, half the list is BYD. And yeah, having one more choice, 2, 3 more choices, Tesla is going to have more room to expand their market. But again, like we started the show by saying, no matter who wins, we win. That's
I asked
my belief.
Corey Steuben, who used to work at Monroe and Associates, and they're world-renowned auto experts because they break down the cars. And I asked him, what is the number one reason why the legacy automakers, what is their biggest disadvantage to Tesla? His answer was trims. These guys have so many trims that it's hard for them to be able to create economies of scale and negotiate with suppliers, and just the sheer complexity of their factories. And he went through, all sorts of reasons how the trims impact the complexity. It's like exponential issues, And so then that's the other thing that we just said here. BYD's got way too many cars. So anyways, that was good. Thank you so much, Brian. That was fantastic. I appreciate your knowledge on this. Follow him on his YouTube channel. It's a fantastic channel, and it's just getting better and better every day. Thank you so much, Brian, at MyTeslaWeekend. See you, everybody. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.